Market Musings with Fairbairn and Russell. Welcome to the Market Musings podcast, where today we're going to be talking fertiliser, specifically potash, as we welcome Graham Clarke, the newly appointed CEO of Emerson plc, a company with a world-class potash project in Morocco. Hi Graham, and welcome to the Market Musings podcast.
Hi guys, it's great to be here speaking to you.
Good, and hi Kenny as well.
Hi Graham, how's things?
Very good, yes, it's very good, thank you.
Whereabouts are you calling from today?
Well, I'm in North Yorkshire, right on the coast in a village called Sandsend, just outside of Whitby. It's a part of the world where I've been for, 30 odd years now, actually. I'm originally from the west side of the country, so I'm a Lancastrian, but Yorkshire's my home now, so.
All right, you can't be far from Mark then. You must be close to there, Mark.
Yep, can't be that. I'm probably only, an hour and a bit to where you are, Graham, from York?
Yes, it's about an hour to York from here, so it's a place we go to quite a lot, actually, York.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good. I think you're the closest guest that we've had. We've been all over the world with our guests, and you're probably the closest to me anyway. We need to get someone up in Scotland, Kenny, and then you can maybe trump that.
Yeah, we'll get a few Scottish ones on, but no, it's great. It's great to have you on, Graham. And part of this podcast, what we like to do is, obviously, we'll speak about the Potash project later on in the podcast, but we'd also like to go back into your past, and it's really up to you how far you would like to go. You know, you can go back to where you were born, what you done at school, what your education was like, how you get into mining. It's really an open floor for you, just to tell us a bit about the person, because we like to know more about the person. Sometimes in the company, because people will invest in a person as well as the company. So it's your show for the next 5-10 minutes.
Okay, right. Well, thank you for that. I'll probably will go back to before I actually started work and probably started my career. So as I said, I'm from the west side of the country, born in Lancashire, but lived sort of in North Liverpool from being quite young. So for anybody out there that's a football fan, I support the only team that comes from the city of Liverpool, and that, of course, is Everton. Lifelong Everton supporter, as my sons are as well, and my grandsons. So
okay,
it's a family tradition. But I was at school. I wasn't really clear what my career, where it would head or what I wanted to do. I actually have to admit that I spent most of my secondary school days playing sport and focusing on playing rugby and cricket, rather than on where my career would go and what A-levels or what qualifications I would get. So in the end, I drifted into doing a mining engineering degree. When I say drifted, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. The subjects I was doing sort of pushed me towards engineering, I suppose. And mining seemed to be an area where there was opportunity to travel, to do exciting stuff, and that attracted me. So I did a mining engineering degree at Nottingham University. Did some vacation experience while I was there out in South Africa, and had an opportunity to go back out to South Africa when I finished my degree in 1985. But in the event, I actually took an opportunity to go and work at Cleveland Potash Limited, which was the only potash mine in the UK, and that's up here on the northeast coast. And the original intention there was to spend a couple of years there getting some experience, getting a bit of a grounding. I have to say I was quite a sort of naive young graduate when I left university. But I stayed at Cleveland Potash, and I really valued the time there, because I spent the first 5 or 6 years working underground in a mine. It's quite a challenging mine, which we'll maybe sort of link to the Emerson story a bit later on. But a very challenging mine, deep mine, 1,000 meters below surface, very hot, quite difficult conditions. But I did every job as a miner and then as a supervisor, which was a perfect grounding for actually understanding how not just that mine, but any mine sort of works and operates. And really one of the things I see as a strength is my ability to get on with people. And, as you progress in a career, leading people is really important, because no company is worth anything without people, and it's the people that make a company successful or otherwise. And being able to engage with people, I've always thought is the most important thing. So those early years, working with the guys, that ultimately would be working for me, I built a lot of relationships, and I think respect was a really important thing. And maybe it was the way I was brought up, but I always brought up to be respectful of people and give people an opportunity, and that way you get respect back, and that's how you build relationships where people will actually be very happy to work with you, work for you, be led by you, and that was a really good grounding for me.
Yeah. What kind of jobs? It's a bit of a pun, but obviously you're thrown in at the deep end, almost the cold face, so to speak. So what kind of jobs were you doing as a graduate? Because that's quite interesting. Usually a graduate gets parachuted in at a higher level.
Yes, well, it was basically a lot of conveyors underground, so shoveling spillage that's come off conveyors, building supports, operating the mining equipment. I actually got trained as a shot firer, so I actually, charged all the headings up that were due to be blasted, and was responsible for that. So every job, and it's you're working underground with guys that have been working in the mine for 20, 30 years. So tough guys, and it's it was great to actually be able to do that, and as I say, you get to understand people and how to communicate. And I watched other young graduates come and go during that period. Ones who came in maybe, like you said, expecting to be put into a position of responsibility and authority, and they sort of fell by the wayside because of their attitude and maybe a level of arrogance, which never gets you anywhere. As far as I'm concerned, it's it's engaging with people and being able to communicate effectively. That is what makes the difference.
Yeah. So you really did start from at the ground then.
That's right. So I over my period, I was actually at Cleveland Potash for a total of 26 years. And the last 7, I was managing director, so responsible for not just the mine, but the process plant and the port. So for the the full business, reporting to the parent company, which by then was Israel Chemicals Limited, one of the large global potash producers. So that gave me a lot of experience of the wider potash world. I also, during that time, spent quite a bit of time in Spain. ICL owned potash mines in Spain, so I was actually a director of the Spanish operation as well. So really good experience.
Just for the benefit of our listeners, Graham, can you explain exactly what potash is used for? I know it's a fertilizer, but I think it's got more uses than that, so it might be beneficial to let everybody know.
Okay, well, potash is the vast majority of potash produced is used as a fertilizer. So the term potash it's in relation to the potassium. So it's an evaporite. It's formed through a process of evaporation. The mineral, so saline lake many millions of years ago is evaporated on surface and being covered by various materials subsequent to that, and that's how the underground potash mines were formed. But today, at the Dead Sea in Israel, there's an example. That's a saline sea, and that's evaporating, and there's potash produced from solar evaporation ponds in the Dead Sea. So it's a potassium is what we're after. So 2 products are made: potassium chloride based material, which is muriate of potash, MOP as it's termed, or sulfate of potash, which is SOP. And basically that's providing the potassium element to fertilizers. All plants, doesn't matter where they are, what they are, require 6 main nutrients to actually grow. And that is the potassium, nitrogen, sulfur, magnesium, phosphorus, and calcium. So all plants need those nutrients around the world. And today there's around 600 million tons of fertilizer produced and sold each year, different blends of the nutrients, but the total fertilizer market is of that size. And the potash part of that which is produced in various parts of the world. The market for the actual potash is around 60 million tons a year that feeds into the manufacture of fertilizers. So anybody that buys fertilizer from the local garden centre to put on their tomatoes or whatever, it will have potassium in it. It will have potash in it. It'll be part of the makeup of that fertilizer.
Would that be in like a liquid form or solid form, or could it be both?
It can be both. So you can get it in solid or liquid. The vast majority of the potash spread in sort of agriculture would be in solid form.
Okay.
Generally as an NPK, so mixed with nitrogen and phosphorus. Okay. That's the most classic type of fertilizer that farmers would put on.
And that would be spread what stage in the process of growing a crop?
Various applications, depending on the crop. It might be a couple of applications a year or just one. So it varies. And farmers, certainly in Europe, North America, to some extent Brazil, are pretty smart about what they're doing. They're actually measuring, checking the soil, checking what quantities of each nutrient they have to apply so that they're being efficient in the use. And that's something that really, the world as a whole has to do, because as the population is growing as it is, and we're having to produce more food from less agricultural land, the only way to actually do that and increase the yields is to apply fertilizers efficiently. So the right blends, the right quantities at the right time, so that you actually get the soil into a good condition so that plants grow better than they have before.
And so is there any alternatives to potash out there, Graham? Just out of curiosity.
No, as I say, every plant needs those 6 nutrients and smaller quantities of other nutrients to actually grow. You will be able to grow plants without applying potash, but they will be, as the soil becomes more and more deficient in the K, the potassium, the crops will fail and you won't get the yields that are required to be gained. So there is no substitute. There's no substitute for fertilizers. And that's one of the fundamentals behind, the Chemist project and what Emerson are working on at the moment. There is going to be a growing demand for fertilizers year on year. The population's growing, the agricultural land's reducing, more food's required. The only way to do that is by applying fertilizer. So, as a fertilizer project and one, that has some, sort of standout economics, it is a sort of fundamental support for the project to be developed.
And has your whole career really been in potash then, Graham?
Well, I spent 20 odd years at Cleveland Potash, so yes, it was potash, but the reserves of the potash there were dwindling. So in the last couple of years that I was there, I actually got the funding to develop to a seam lower down than the potash there, which is polyhalite. And the polyhalite contains 4 of the 6 nutrients, so it's quite an unusual mineral. It is found around the world, but there's only one location in the world where the seam's thick enough actually to mine, and that is in the northeast of England. So we access the polyhalite at Cleveland Potash, and that ultimately has replaced the potash mining for that business. So the polyhalite consists of potassium, magnesium, sulfur, and calcium. So it actually contains 4 of the 6 nutrients. So as a naturally occurring product that you don't have to process, you just simply crush or grind down and form into fertilizer pellets. It's a very economic way to mass produce fertilizer inputs.
And
so
so polyhalite came after the potash.
Yes, it was actually deposited in the sort of cycle. It was deposited first.
Right.
The polyhalite, just for interest in this part of the world, was actually deposited 250 million years ago.
Right.
Over a period of around 10 to 12 million years. So it just sort of puts, geological timescales are a completely different thing.
But you mined the potash first?
Yes, we did at Cleveland Potash. The polyhalite was 150 meters deeper.
Okay.
So we accessed that with 2 drifts around a kilometer long.
Okay.
And started to mine it. And that's really what led into the next stage of my career, which was joining Sirius Minerals. 2011. And Chris Fraser, the CEO, was looking to develop a business based on mining the polyhalite seam a bit further to the east than Cleveland Potash. And I joined the team in the early days when there was 7 or 8 of us, and really, had a crazy vision of Chris's that we could sink 2 deep shafts in the national park, in the North York Moors National Park, and transport the mineral from there to Teesside and export it from there. So, but it was a brilliant, exciting opportunity, which I took.
It was a great story to follow, particularly because me being geographically quite close to it. And I remember watching live the planning committee, if you like. I remember streaming it live. I think it was quite a hot day, and everyone looked rather hot.
It was a very hot day, and we were sat inside the room.
Yeah, everyone looked quite hot.
We were hot and rather nervous, actually.
Yeah, I can imagine. But to grant permission in a national park was very significant. I remember that being a very significant thing, and I thought the mining plans were excellent. And as you say, I mean, that as it was promoted at the time, it was a world-class potash deposit. And I think it's fascinating as well to know where it comes from, a saline lake, that was at surface millions of years ago, that's evaporated, and then other things have been deposited on top. I mean, it's mind-boggling to sort of try and imagine that.
It is, and when when we were doing the exploration work and you drill the core and the core section comes out from the polyhalite and you hold it in your hands, and it's 250 million years old and was on the surface at one point. Yeah. It's sort of, it's quite I actually struggle to get my head around stuff like this, and, sort of trying to imagine that, because it's, I'm a more practical person, and I like to be able to see stuff and, work it out. So it's, but it is amazing to think that, it's that long ago.
And
actually, the lake at the time, the Inland Sea, was actually on the equator. So with tectonic movements, it's actually moved from being on the equator to being
in North Yorkshire.
In North Yorkshire, strangely, a strange place to arrive. Yeah.
Oh wow, that is fascinating.
Yeah, and that particular deposit, Graham, was the biggest in the world. I think it still is.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's certainly the largest that's been discovered. Polyhalite does occur elsewhere, but it's typically much thinner, and it's just sort of traces rather than a seam of the magnitude of what it is up here.
Wow. Do you often find polyhalite along with potash, or not necessarily?
It often is, but as I say, it's in sort of like half centimetre bands of it. It's not something that you can find separately, so it's just sort of mixed in as part of the original evaporation process. So it's very rare to find it in the quantities as it is here. The only other part of the world where they're looking to or been trying to develop polyhalite is in New Mexico in the States, and there the seam is around a metre thick. Whereas in North Yorkshire here, it's 25 metres thick. So it's a completely different scale. And
so obviously you left Sirius, but why did you leave? Were you quite sad to move on?
Well, actually at the time we'd had a bit of a family tragedy. We'd lost a young grandson in January of this year. He'd been in intensive care for 5 months, having been born prematurely, and I'd spent a large part of my career not being at home and putting too much focus on work, probably. And it was a good time to, just to step away, and the intention was to have a few months off with the family.
I see.
Which I did, and was great. But then coronavirus came along, which slightly more difficult to find a new job than I thought it would. But in the event, I'm sorted with the Emerson Project, which is a fantastic opportunity, and I'm very excited to be part of.
Yeah, and before we get on to Emerson, I assume you still follow the Sirius story.
Yes. Yeah.
And what's so obviously it's been taken over now, hasn't it, by Anglo American, wasn't it? Yeah. But the plans are still the same, still to go ahead with the same that it always was.
Yes, as I understand, yes.
Yeah.
I think the Anglo taking over was a good thing. One of the main drivers for me on that project being I'm not from this part of the world, but this is my home, and the opportunity to bring the benefits to the economy, the jobs, this part of the world for decades to come. It really, it was in part about leaving a legacy of, for the future, and for that to be, for Anglo to take over, that's guaranteed that they will build it and it will operate. So it is a good thing, really good thing for this part of the world. And I think the fact that a company the size of Anglo, with the mining background that they have, for them to actually buy that project is a compliment to everybody that played a part in developing it, because if Anglo think it's a good buy, then it's a good buy. So,
I mean, you can't fault that. If a company like Anglo's coming along and buying you up, then you could do far worse than that, really.
Well, I mean, in terms of you're delivering something, you've sort of made it, really. If they
exactly,
think
of course. Okay, so Emerson say they have a world-class potash deposit. So I wonder, how do you define a world-class deposit? What makes a world-class deposit of potash?
Well, I think it's not necessarily the actual deposit and the quality of it. What we have is something that's consistent, it's present, and we know we can mine it. It's really it's the economics of it. That's what really make it world class.
Right. Okay.
So we're not going to be a massive producer. We're looking at 750,000, 800,000 tons a year, which is doesn't put us in the sort of top echelons in terms of production from one mining operation. But the location of the project, the capital cost to develop it, which is low by comparison to many other potash projects, or most other potash projects. I'll come on to a bit more detail about that. And then the operating costs and our ability to actually ship the product cheaply at a very low cost to the major markets. The main market we're targeting is South America, but obviously the African market is going to grow. So it's it gives us really good margins. So it's world class because of a combination of those factors, and it makes it one of the very few potash projects that are being looked at to be developed that'll actually get there because of those metrics.
I'm actually looking at the presentation just now, Graham, and I didn't realise Morocco was as attractive investment jurisdiction. I always thought that Botswana was number one, but it's certainly got a lot of ticks in the boxes, so it has.
It has, and because of these strange times we're all living in at the moment, I haven't actually been out there yet and seen the project, or actually I've never been to Morocco in the past either. But I'm talking to the team, and it's been a small team that have worked on this project, but some exceptionally talented people. They all, and also I've spoken to a few analysts that have actually been out there to look at the project, who've been blown away by Morocco and the standard of the infrastructure and the people as well. So it is. I think in terms of Africa, it is the infrastructure and the development there, and the stability of the country is probably second to none, which makes it a really attractive place to invest and to develop a project like this.
Yeah, and there's a lot of government incentives as well that obviously help the bottom line and the economics of the project. I mean, I think income tax reduction, government investment and training investment as well. So 5-year tax holiday. So I mean, there's lots of help from the government, which is always beneficial.
It is, yeah. I mean, I think in actual sort of monetary value, it's still significant, but it's having the support and the backing is the key thing, because that's when you're looking for investment from elsewhere. Investors want to know if the project is, it's in a stable part of the world, if you've got support from the authorities, those are all key things to attract other investment. And that definitely is the case in Morocco.
Yeah. Yeah. Just before we go into an overview of the actual project, Graham, I noticed a tweet from Emerson the other day, and it was, there's a strike in Belarus. Now, I didn't even know that Belarus was the second biggest exporter of potash in the world. What's the knock-on effect of is that going to have for companies like yourself?
Well, I think the potash market has always been very well controlled. There's a word here that I shouldn't use, which is cartel. So I maybe won't use it, but it's always been a very controlled. There's always been 4, 5, 6 major producers around the world. So there's the Canadians, Potash Corps, as there were, Carly and Salts in Germany. There's Russian producers, and then the Belarusian producers, and then ICL, with their operations in Israel, Spain, and the UK, and those are the main players who produce and supply the vast majority of the potash in the world. And the market's always been well controlled in that they will match supply with demand. There are cycles in the price, but then they adjust their outputs to fall in line with that. And then something like this with the Belarus producers who produce a lot of potash, as you say, it just sort of gives a sort of slightly disruption to that level of control. It makes customers a little bit nervous about the security of their supply, and it offers opportunity then for other suppliers either to come into the market or engage with customers, and it sort of strengthens the opportunity to become a new player in the potash world. So
yeah.
As for the how long this sort of story runs on for and what actual impacts it has in terms of supply or pricing remains to be seen yet. But I think what it does do is it just will open people's eyes to the fact that where the potash has always come from doesn't have to be where the potash has always come from, and if there's opportunities for other suppliers to come into the market, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on, Graham. Can you give us a quick overview of the Chemist Potash project in Morocco?
Yeah. Okay. So the few key things, I've sort of covered them to some extent, but the location of the project. So yes, it's in Morocco, and we've talked a bit about Morocco being a really good place to develop a project, a good place to attract investment to. But for the actual location of the deposit, the potash deposit, which is 100 odd kilometres from the port of Casablanca, an already established port, so we don't actually have to do any port development as part of our capital spend. Great infrastructure. There's proper highways from very close to the project area to the coast and to the port, and also power supplies within a few kilometres of the site. So really good location in terms of minimising our sort of capital development on infrastructure, but also then shipping. In terms of the shipping from Casablanca, and we've sort of looked at the South American market, Brazil, as one of the key markets, and we can actually ship our product to Brazil $70 or $80 cheaper than the Canadians could ship to Brazil because of the logistical challenges that they have. With the potash mines in Canada generally being in Saskatchewan, a long way from the coast, and then the shipping route is more complex as well. So we have quite a strategic advantage in terms of the location for all those reasons that I've just discussed. Mm-hmm. And those feed into the low capital cost, which is the significant advantage we have. So we're looking at around $400 million to develop the project. And this is really because of the seam. The seam is around 600 meters below surface. There are no aquifers, no water-bearing strata between the seam itself and the surface, which allows us to look to access the seam and develop the mine using 2 drifts, so 2 declines from surface down to the deposit rather than sinking deep shafts, which is a much more costly undertaking. And particularly when you compare this potash deposit and project to, let's say, a Canadian development. So if you're developing a mine in Canada, you would have to do that with shafts because all of the Canadian potash is overlain by an aquifer. Well, it's sort of running sand, so it's a highly unstable section of ground. And the only way that they can get through it is by drilling into it and freezing it before they actually sink the shaft through it. Mm-hmm. So it's a very expensive, slow process. And typically sinking 2 new shafts down to the potash in in Canada would cost another $1 billion minimum over and above our capital expenditure. Our two declines are going to cost us around $35 million. The equivalent shaft development, and it's the same for the Sirius project, you're looking at around $1 billion to sink the shaft. So massive advantage that we can access deposit via declines and then just run the mineral out up a conveyor belt. So huge advantage in terms of the capital expenditure. So if you look at the differences there, no port development, very little to spend on the infrastructure because of, Morocco is so well set up, and no shaft sinking, that's probably a couple of $1 billion saving on capital against, a similar project elsewhere with different geological conditions and in a different geographical location. So that really sets this project aside. And then the low operating costs. We might have a slightly higher operating cost than a very efficient Belarusian mine or a Canadian mine, but our advantage is that we're 100 kilometers from the coast, from a really good port that's got good access to the main market. So our logistic costs are $70 to $80 a ton less than the competition. So, those are things that combine to make this, a world-class project.
I see. Yeah, it starts to make sense. So when you say declines, is that almost like digging a tunnel, like a sloping downwards towards where the deposit is?
That's right. Yeah, it's a sloping tunnel, around 1 in 7, 1 in 8 gradient.
Okay.
About 3 kilometers long, and that'll give us access into the mine, which means then you can drive equipment down the road rather than dismantling it and putting it down the shaft. And you can scale up and mine as much as you want because you're running up a conveyor rather than relying on a hoisting system. So, huge advantage.
Okay, and the shaft then, you sink a shaft in a shaft project like in Sirius, and you then have to lower all the stuff down to the shaft, down to the bottom, and then excavate the seam and then shaft it back up again.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas we'll just drive down the same equipment that actually drives the decline. We'll start to develop the mine, and seamless. A mine that operates with shafts, all the big equipment has to be dismantled.
Yeah.
And then rebuilt underground, which a couple of month process just to build a piece of equipment up.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So it's it's like sort of Lego on a much grander scale, or Meccano. I remember when Meccano was sort of really existing.
Yeah. And then you'll truck it by road to the port.
Yeah. So the process facilities will be at the site.
Okay.
And then we'll just truck the finished product to port.
Okay.
So the next stage then, Graham, obviously you guys have just completed your feasibility study and you are pretty well cashed up. Is that correct? Just looking at your recent presentation.
Yeah, so we feasibility study was finished in June. I joined in July. We did a sort of small raise in July just to make sure that we've got money to keep us going and to do some additional technical work, which is what we're on with at the moment. So the feasibility study is a really good piece of work, but there's areas always where you can do more work, and there's a few that we've engaged specialists just to do a bit more work on it. That so we make sure that we've got everything covered and all the risks mitigated as far as we can. And the aim then is that we will be looking to raise more money in the not too distant future, so that we can start to do some more detailed engineering, front-end design, with a view, and that's in parallel with finishing the permitting process off, which is well underway and should be completed in the first part of next year. And then is look to raise the major capital at some point in first half, middle of next year, with a target, fairly ambitious maybe, but a target of starting construction at the end of next year, beginning of 2022.
Right.
Yeah, that's not long away at all.
No.
No, it's interesting. I mean, I've known of Emerson for a while, and actually, I was at a presentation, and it was Hayden. Hayden was doing the presentation night, and he was very accomplished. He was very smooth, and he gave a good presentation that night. But it's something I've not really revisited, so it's it's got my interest going again. I'll need to do a bit of digging, but no, it certainly sounds like a extremely interesting project.
No, it does. Absolutely.
It certainly is. We announced this week that we've got Shore Capital coming on board as an advisor as well. So we're starting to pick the pace up, and the aim is to follow that timeline, finishing the permitting off first quarter of next year, carry on doing some more technical work with the intention of starting the more detailed work in Q1 of next year, and then they can get out there and get the funding in place.
Yep, and I assume the government are helping you all the way. It's, looking at the presentation, they seem to be very active.
Good relations with the various ministries and over there. I'm looking forward to being able to get out there and meet a few of these people myself. But we've got a team in Morocco who are very committed and engaged with all levels of government, from the local up to the national government in Morocco. And Hayden, and the team have already started on looking at the different routes to the major funding, and there's a lot of conversations ongoing. And I'm obviously now able to join that and assist with the discussions and any due diligence that we have to go through.
Yeah, you do have a good team as well. I think at Emerson, I've not met Hayden personally, but I've spoken to him on an interview, and I did meet Phil Clarke, and also Lachlan, I think his name is.
Lachlan,
yeah.
He's an awesome guy, and I can't wait to actually meet him in person. But he seems to work 24 hours a day. So I mean, I've said this a few times in different conversations I've had, but the guys up to me joining have done an incredible job and a huge amount of work, and it is a very small team, but really good. And that's been, to me, I talked earlier about it's people that make a successful business or a successful organization. And for me, joining this team it's a pleasure, because you're joining a committed team of people who are all working in the same way with the same intention. And that's what gives you the advantage. That's part of what makes it a world-class project is the people who are developing it, because that's what makes a difference. And there's no egos, there's no arrogance about it. It's it's a group of people who we all talk openly and working with the same goal.
No, good. Look forward to seeing how it develops. It's definitely interesting. I wonder, just on the sort of agriculture theme, Graham, I mean, maybe a bit of an obvious question with population growth, but where do you see the sort of future of agriculture? I mean, I guess we're going to have to go down better use of land, so more dense crops, i.e., you're going to need fertilizer for that. But what about things like this concept of vertical farming? I mean, I still, presumably fertilizer is still required in those scenarios as well.
Yeah, and it's the thing. There are opportunities to do smarter things for some crops, maybe some of the higher value crops. But when you think of the quantities of grains that are consumed around the world, and we used to feed cattle to produce more meat. Now that's one of the issues that we have, is that for the sort of growing middle class, they want more choice of food, and meats has to be part of that. So it's the bulk crops that we have to produce more of and be more efficient, and the only way to do that is with the fertilizer. I think there are smart ways to produce more of the more specialized crops, but it's the bulk production that we have to be better at. In Africa is an area where there's a huge opportunity through probably a combination of fertilizer and irrigation, but to grow a lot more food than has historically been the case. And that again puts us in the right sort of place. There's no potash production in Africa. Our vision is to be the first and the leading potash producer in Africa. That's our vision.
All right, that's quite a statement. So there's no other company in the African continent that's producing potash at the moment?
At the moment, no. There's a couple of other projects who are sort of working on it, but our target is to be the first into production and then the leading producer.
All right, good stuff. Okay, Mark, I think it's time to put Graham on the spot. I'll push this over to you. You're better at introducing this.
Yes, so Graham, if you're up for it, we often ask directors who come on to do a 60-second pitch. So what I do is I count you in from 3, 2, 1 and start stopwatch. And you've sort of got about 60 seconds to sort of give a bit of a high-level overview of Emerson, the project, why it's a good investment and why people should perhaps consider taking a closer look and investing. So if you're up for that, we can go for it.
As long as your stopwatch isn't like the countdown clock in the background, that would probably distract me.
Yeah, no, there's no music. What I'll do is, as we get to maybe 50, 55 seconds, I might give you a slight warning. You're approaching the end, but if you keep an eye on the nearest clock or second hand in your area, then you can check where you are. So I'll count you in now from 3, 2, 1. Take it away.
Right, the Emerson Project, it is a world-class potash development opportunity. The development will be in Morocco, which is the most stable of the African countries, and with a very welcoming government to give every opportunity for the project to be successful. With very low capex in terms of capex intensity, at the bottom end of the scale of any project that's looking to be developed in the potash world. And once in operations, we're in the bottom 25% in terms of cost per ton of production. Huge strategic advantages in the location and the route to port. Currently, we've finished our feasibility study and we're doing some more technical work to make sure that we can sail through any due diligence that the project has to go through in funding. We'll be looking for some more funding towards the end of the year, and then into next year, we're looking for the major funding to build the project, around $400 million to complete all of the construction and get the project into operations. At the moment, the project, the company is hugely undervalued for where the project is and the potential that the development will bring and the returns that are out there. And it's a great opportunity for anybody out there to have a look at the project, read up on us, and follow us forward. We're going to do this. The team is a great team, very committed, very talented people. Mm-hmm. And I have every confidence that within 2 to 3 years, this project will be into construction and aiming towards being into operations. And then we will be the first and leading potash producer in the African continent.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much. That was good. That was just
it was excellent.
Yeah, it was a good little synopsis. It was about 1:30, but I thought I'd let you carry on because you seem to be in good flow.
Yes. Yeah. I think our record, Graham, for the 60 seconds is over 3 minutes. So you were well under.
It's a difficult one if you've not rehearsed it and you lose track of. Hopefully it was a good one.
Yeah, it's better not to rehearse it, Graham. I think if people, that's why we try and sort of put you in the spot or not give you much warning anyway. It comes from the heart then, and it's more authentic. But no, it's great been having you on, and hopefully we can get you back on again at some point soon when you guys have progressed the project forward.
Yeah, that'd be great. I've enjoyed it actually. It's great. Pleasure chatting.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's been nice to talk to you, Graham. Yeah, and as Kenny said, we look forward to following the story, and maybe we'll invite you back on towards the end of the year, perhaps, or somewhere like that, and see where you're going.
Do a Christmas special.
Yeah, we can do. Yeah, that'd be nice.
Well, we might be up on holiday in Aviemore, in which case we'd be much closer to Kenny. So.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It's still a fair old drive. I think Aviemore for me is probably about 4 hours. So it is. Yeah. It's a kind of awkward. It's not an awkward place to get to, but there's different ways to go. But good stuff. All right. Well, thanks for your time, Graham, and hopefully I'll have that conversation towards the end of the year.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Good to talk, Graham. Thanks very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another podcast from Market Musings with Fairbairn and Russell.